I'm Cheryl, and this is Spirit Mail. So today I was going to start the love readings for October, first half of October. And as I started to move through them, they were really heavy, and I was a little taken aback by that and asked God, what is going on here? And it is the first day of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So there's a lot of energy out there about domestic violence. So I was like, okay, God, I don't really want to work in this energy. And basically he said, it's time to tell your story. So with that said, I am going to tell my story. Before I get started, I do want to say a couple of things. This is my story. The next thing I want to say is that domestic violence is very real. And in our country, the U.S. Department of Justice says that 1.3 million women and 830-something thousand men are physically assaulted by a partner every year. That is real. That is not what I'm going to be talking about. There are many levels of domestic violence. That's the physical level. But there's also mental abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse within a marriage. And it's more along those lines of what I'll be talking about in my story. Before I start, I'm going to go to God, guides, my angels, my archangels, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you for allowing me to be able to deliver this message. I ask you to take control of my mouth and let the message come out in a way that is in the best interest and the highest good of all who are here to hear it, and let them receive it in the way that you would have it to be received. And let me present it in the way that you would have it to be presented. In Jesus' name, thank you. Okay, so 2000. I am invited to a community awareness meeting for a domestic violence group out of a different community. They were coming into our community to bring awareness. Sorry. So I go to this meeting, and I, during this meeting, identify that I have been an abused woman. I am currently married in 2000, but this is my third marriage. And I identified that my first marriage was an abusive one. So then I get appointed as chairperson of our organization for our community, and I accept that appointment. Within 3 years, we had raised enough community awareness and enough money to open our own shelter, an actual shelter to house women and children who were victims of domestic violence. The way we did that was, of course, we had major fundraisers, but we would go around to civic organizations and churches and any group that would listen to us, and we would talk about domestic violence. And when we would talk about the mental, emotional, verbal, that kind of abuse, I would talk and tell my story. So now we're going to fast forward to 2004. I am leaving work one day, and there's a gentleman that I work with, and he says, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "I'm on my way to the attorney's office to sign my divorce papers." And he was like, he made a face, and he's like, "Cheryl, really? How many is that?" I said, "That's number 3. And he says, all those guys can't be that bad. There is a common denominator, and if you go look in the mirror, you'll probably find it." And I rolled my eyes and mumbled something under my breath and probably said something like "F you" and walked out. And went and signed my divorce papers. So now we're going to fast forward to 2015. I leave that same husband again. I remarried him in 2006. After we divorced, I remarried him in 2006. Then, by 2015, I've left again. And I am a mess. My kids are angry with me. He is just devastated, just does not understand what's going on. And I'm a mess because I don't understand what's going on. Because for 5 months before I left, I would pray every night that God would just let me die. That's how unhappy I was. That's how incomplete I was. I finally left, and the next probably year and a half, God spent a lot of time with me, helping me to understand who I am and that I was lovable. That was really difficult for me because when God asked me to take out a notebook and a piece of paper and write down what he saw as lovable about me, I stared at a blank page for a day because I couldn't think of anything that made me lovable in his eyes. Now, I want you to know, at this time in my life, I am a born-again Christian, on fire for God, speaking in tongues. And I say on fire for God, definitely on fire for God. I'm no longer attending church by this time. And I still don't. And that's a whole nother topic. But anyway, I stare at this blank page for over a day, and then it takes me another 2 to 3 days to fill out one thing on each line, a full page, one thing on each line. So it was a process for me to understand that I was lovable. Did I agree with it? Not necessarily right away. I think self-love is a journey. And I think that we knock ourselves off of that journey a lot, every day. Anyway, so now we're going to go backwards to 2008. In 2008, while I was married the second time to husband number 3, I hope this isn't all confusing for you, but I had surgery, and I was spending a day with my sister, and somehow or another my first husband's name came up. She brought it up, and I said I didn't know. He lived in another state. And she said, well, let's Google him and see if he has an internet presence. So I'm like, okay. So we're walking to her computer, and I say, I wonder if he got married again, if he ever got married again. And she said, oh, I'm wondering if he opened some kind of cool company. He's a really smart guy. So she Googles his name, and his obituary comes up. And he had just died the week before, the same time that I'd had surgery. Now, this was my first husband, who was an abusive man, right? So I fall to the ground crying. I'm telling you, like crying, can't breathe, snot running out of my nose, crying bad. Grieving his death. And I don't know why, because I divorced him, right? So, coming back now to 2015, when I left my last husband again, and I'm going through all this journey, understanding about self-love. We go through this awakening process. I feel like I've been going through it my entire life. And I feel like God takes that seriously. Whoever you want to call him, God, creator, universe, the field, the force, he doesn't care. But I think he takes, and he's not even he's a it. It's energy. But I say God, because that's what's comfortable for me. But I think he takes that seriously when we're truly trying to learn things and when we truly have a good intention. So in 2018, a year ago, I start missing that first husband again. And I'm missing him to the point that I get sad and cry. That's how I'm missing him. Thank God I could still function, but I would get sad and cry. And a couple of my real close friends, people I held in confidence, I would ask them, what do you think is going on with me? Why do you think all of a sudden I am missing him so much? Of course, nobody had an answer. So I'm driving down the road one day, and I'm crying, talking to myself, wondering, what is wrong with you, Cheryl? Why are you going through this? And finally, I direct my words to God. And I say, God, what is wrong with me? Why am I still in love with a man who died 10 years ago, that I divorced 20 years before that, who was abusive? What is wrong with me? So all of a sudden, and I kid you not, it's like this vacuum took place inside my car. And the road noise went away, the music on the radio, complete silence, and up here over the passenger side visor, there's this movie reel playing, and it's silent, but it's snippets, like pictures of our life are flashing, pictures of our life, especially the beginning of our marriage, or the beginning of our dating, when we were dating, and it started getting interpreted, and God said, Cheryl, you were never abused. He said, in fact, if there was an abuser, it was you. And I'm listening to this, and of course I'm not saying anything because I'm watching these pictures. I'm driving, but I'm watching these pictures, and I'm listening, and I'm crying, and I'm hurting. And he says, in fact, he said his only fault was that he loved you so much, and that he had really bad coping skills. He said you accepted him completely, just like he was, the entire time y'all dated. You never had an issue with anything he did the entire time you dated him. And then once you were married, you put your foot down and decided he needed to be somebody else. Specifically, he needed to give up drinking. And when he would attempt to quit drinking and he would fail, you would belittle him. You would be angry at him. You would holler at him. You would tell him he was a failure. You just belittled him all the time. That was his sin. And he didn't know how to cope with not only your demands, but your commands that he changed. You wanted him to give up everything that he knew about himself and become who it was that you thought he should be. So Cheryl, you were never abused. Well, now I had to deal with the fact that I was the abuser. I was the one who caused so much havoc in our marriage. And that sent me on a whole nother journey, because now I needed to be able to make it right. But that's a whole different story. I'm going to stick to this story about abuse. And I want to talk to you specifically about the underlying issues with abuse that don't get talked about enough, if at all. I know we talk about verbal and emotional and financial and sexual abuse as it pertains to women being the victims. But how often do we talk about it where we, the women, are actually the perpetrators of this abuse? So ladies, we're going to have a talk. We're going to have face to face, or my face to your computer screen, talk for a little while. We're real quick to talk about how we're mistreated and how our spouse or significant other won't do whatever needs to be done, whatever. But where's our compassion? Whenever I was married to my last husband and his father died, he was going through a serious bout with depression. His whole world had changed. And I was sitting amongst a group of women. There were three of us, all three of us on this board for community awareness for domestic violence. And I'm bitching, excuse my language. I am just letting him have it. He's not there, but I'm letting him have it to the girls, you know. And one of them popped in and she says, Cheryl, do you think he could be suffering with a bout of depression? I mean, his dad just died. And I said, well, depressed or not, we got kids to feed. He needs to get his butt to work. Where was my compassion? So it wasn't just in, after this message that God gave me. I mean, I questioned it. Would God really say something like that to me? Yeah, because I was asking. I truly wanted to know. And I truly desire to be a good person. So he had to truly be honest with me about what was going on, how I had been delusional about what took place, how I had spun it to my own benefit, that I could be a victim and that could be the excuse that didn't work. And in the third marriage, the second marriage, I'm just going to tell you, didn't have time to have any kind of anything. We were married 2 months and 28 days, but that just tells y'all how crazy I am, how crazy I have been in my life. So back to domestic violence and us ladies, let's talk about this. What is it that makes us feel like it's okay for us to do to our significant others what we would never tolerate from them, and that we would scream at the top of our lungs scream out at the top of our lungs if they tried to do those things? We do already scream out at the top of our lungs whenever they belittle us, whenever they emotionally beat us down, whenever they financially try to control us, and whenever they sexually try to control us. And as women, ladies, we do those very same things. Not all of us, perhaps. Surely not. But if you're listening to this video, there's a chance that you or somebody you know has done this. And it's something that we need to think about. Whenever we, and I'm saying we because remember, I know that it's me because God already told me that. So whenever we verbally emasculate our husbands or our significant others, that's abuse. Whenever we try to hold them to a standard that's not fair, that they never agreed to, that's abuse. It's not fair for us to ask anybody to change, much less a man or another woman that we marry, or significant other that we marry, after we've accepted them just like they were the whole time we were dating. That's not fair. That's abuse. For us to expect anybody to live their life in a way that we see fit. Married or not, actually, even our grown kids, if we go sticking our nose in our grown kids' business with their significant other, that is abuse. It's an abuse of our power. And that's what domestic violence is about, power and control. That was another thing God said. Domestic violence is about power and control. And you were trying to control him. You woke up with the intention of controlling his life. He never woke up with that intention about you? Did he defend himself verbally from your attacks? Yes. Did it get scary a couple times? Yes. But his intention was never to control you. He never tried to use his power to get over on you. However, you did that with him. So it's like, I just want us to stop and think, because I know I'm not the only one. That's not how the world works. I'm not that special that I would be the only one who ever did that, is what I'm trying to say. So ladies, when we talk to our husbands in condescending tones because they're not living up to what we think they should, when we deny our attention, it's like, okay, so for instance, how many of us ladies have had conversations with our friends where we said, I'll show him, I'm cutting him off. Can I say that's abuse? Because that's using your power to try to control him. Not just you, I mean, anybody, all of us. Just like a man would try to use his power to get sex from a woman using her power to withhold sex is also abusive. Not only that, I would almost be willing to say, and I'm not a man, so I don't know this, but I would almost be willing to say that a woman withholding sex from a man is just as violent and hurtful as a man slapping a woman in the face. So I spend most of my time in this community where we talk about awakening and we talk about enlightenment and all those other things. And I'm asking us to think about, not just the ladies, the guys too. How do we treat other people? Who do we try to control? Who do we try to one up? Because that's not what it's about. It took me a long time to heal from or forgive myself for when I realized that I was the culprit. I was the perpetrator. It took me a while to get over that. And as we grow and as we evolve, there'll come a day when we need to look back and say, show me me. And if we don't ever get there and we're continuing to try to grow, then something's going to happen that's going to shake our world up to where we'll have to come face to face with it, like what happened with me. I wasn't looking for more information whenever I started missing that man, but I started missing him. This was like a tower moment for me. I missed him so much that I finally cried out to God. That's what tower moments are about. When we finally cry out and say, what is going on? So, I guess what I'm saying is, let's be aware of all of the aspects of domestic violence as we approach Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And let's ask ourselves, or somebody we know who we see those behaviors in, could this be considered abuse? Are these the actions of an evolved person? Are these the behaviors of an evolved person? Sure, there's a lot of other really brilliant things that I need to say. But my main goal in sharing this with you is to release the energy of domestic violence from my space so that I can proceed with doing love readings. So, and to provoke thought. Provoke thought and provoke awareness about the way that we treat each other, because it's very important. What we do to someone else, we actually do to ourselves, because we're all one. Okay, that's my story. I hope that it has helped somebody have a thought or two about domestic violence, about the different layers of domestic violence, and about how we treat each other. Have a great day. Let me see if I can find that little thing. Okay, have a great day. Bye.